The Viking Age was a time of great upheaval in Europe. From the late 8th century, Scandinavian raiders appeared. They came in longships, swift and silent. They sought plunder, land, and sometimes new lives. Their attacks were sudden and brutal. The battle axe became a symbol of their terrifying presence. It was an emblem of Viking power and ferocity. These were not the axes of common woodcutters. Their long handles and broad, sharp blades were made for war. The Viking battle axe was a masterpiece of deadly design. It was not a single uniform type. Several variations existed, evolving over the centuries. The most iconic was the Dane axe. This fearsome weapon had a long wooden shaft, often as tall as a man. This provided incredible reach and leverage. Atop this shaft sat a large, crescent-shaped head. The blade itself was relatively thin. This made it lighter than it looked, allowing for faster swings. But it was incredibly sharp, honed to a razor edge for maximum cutting power. The construction of the axe head was clever. Viking smiths were skilled artisans. They often used a technique called pattern welding for swords, but axe heads were typically made from iron. Sometimes, a harder steel edge was forge welded to the softer iron body. This created a blade that was both resilient and capable of holding a sharp edge. The shape of the head was also important. The wide, flaring blade, sometimes called a bearded axe if it had a hook-like extension at the bottom, increased the cutting surface. Using the Viking battle axe in combat required great strength and skill. The long-handled Dane axe in particular was a two-handed weapon. This meant the warrior had to forego the protection of a shield while wielding it. This was a significant risk. It exposed the warrior to enemy attacks. However, the offensive power of the axe often compensated for this lack of defense. A skilled axe wielder was a whirlwind of destruction. They relied on agility and the terrifying reach of their weapon to keep enemies at bay. The primary technique involved powerful, sweeping blows. The aim was to cleave through shields, helmets, and limbs. The long arc of the swing generated immense force. Even a glancing blow could be disabling. Warriors would use the length of the axe to their advantage. They could strike opponents from a distance where a sword might not reach. They could also use the axe to hook. The beard of the axe head could catch the edge of a shield, pulling it aside. This would leave the opponent vulnerable to a follow-up strike. Section 4. Echoes from the battlefield, decisive moments of the axe. History records several battles where the Viking battle axe played a crucial role. One of the most famous examples is the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. This battle took place in England just before the Norman conquest. King Harold Godwinson of England faced an invading Norwegian army led by King Harald Hardrada. According to the sagas, one enormous Norwegian warrior armed with a Dane axe held a narrow bridge. He single-handedly held back the entire English army for a time. He is said to have slain many Englishmen before he was finally defeated. This lone axeman at Stamford Bridge became a legend. His stand, though ultimately futile for the Norwegians, demonstrated the terrifying potential of the axe. It showed how one skilled warrior with this weapon could dominate a choke point. It highlighted the axe's ability to inflict massive damage. Section 5. The axe's long shadow, psychological warfare and cultural impact. The Viking battle axe was more than just a piece of sharpened metal. It was a potent tool of psychological warfare. Its very appearance was designed to intimidate. The wide, gleaming blade of a Dane axe, often stained with old blood, was a terrifying sight. When combined with the fierce appearance of a Viking warrior, tall, strong, often bearded and screaming a battle cry, the effect was overwhelming. This fear could break an enemy's morale before a single blow was struck. It could cause defenders to flee or to fight with less conviction. European societies, particularly those frequently targeted by Viking raids, developed a deep-seated fear of the Northmen and their axes. Chronicles and prayers from the period often mention the fury of the Northmen and their brutal weapons. The phrase "A furore Norma norum libera nos, Domine," from the fury of the Northmen, deliver us, O Lord, became a common prayer in churches. This shows the profound psychological impact the Vikings had. The axe as their most visually striking weapon, became a central part of this terror. It was a symbol of pagan savagery to many Christian Europeans. Section 6. Beyond the blade. The axe in Viking society and belief. The axe was not solely a weapon of war in Viking society, it was also an essential tool for everyday life. Vikings were farmers, shipbuilders, and craftsmen. Axes were used for felling trees, shaping timber for houses and ships, and many other tasks. This dual nature tool and weapon made the axe a very common object. Most Viking men would have owned an axe and known how to use it. This familiarity likely contributed to their skill when wielding it in battle. The transition from a work tool to a weapon was not a large one. Axes also held symbolic meaning. They appear in Viking art and mythology. Some axes were beautifully decorated with inlaid silver or intricate carvings. These were likely status symbols, owned by wealthy chieftains or renowned warriors. Section 7. The enduring legacy. The Viking axe in history and imagination. The Viking battle axe has left an indelible mark on history and popular culture. Its reputation as a fearsome weapon forged in the Viking Age has endured for centuries. Even today, it remains one of the most recognizable symbols of the Vikings. When we picture a Viking warrior, it is often with a horned helmet, which is historically inaccurate, and a large, menacing axe. This image, though partly a product of later Romanticism, speaks to the powerful impression the axe made on the European psyche. It is a legacy of fear, power, and brutal efficiency. In historical terms, the axe represents a key aspect of Viking military success. Its design and the way it was wielded allowed Viking warriors to overcome various opponents. It was a weapon that suited their raiding tactics and their warrior ethos. The fear it inspired was a significant factor in their conquests and raids. The stories of axe-wielding Vikings, like the hero at Stamford Bridge, became legendary. They contributed to the complex image of the Viking